I've been a record breaker, taking credit as an educator. I've been known to spit the flows and make it shaky, shaky thing. Popping, locking, stopping, let it hang. Watch us as we drop this hip hop, it's like it stings. We make the whole room drop and everybody sing. We want the funk. We gotta have that funk. We kick it old school, we think we're so cool. We take it back to the past, we gonna act a fool. Enough jumps, the middle finger, make my Jaeger.
Hello, 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 and welcome to Sports Buzz, the Fanatical View. I am your host, Scott D. Lewis, here live in studio, back live in studio, Comcast Cable Channel 23, downtown, rainy, a little balmy, foggy Danbury, Connecticut.
Extra foggy this morning.
Certainly was. Well, that's a good news, though, Bob. That means the snow is melting and things are warming up.
Yeah, it was like, what, almost 60 today in some spots?
Possibly up into the 50s, certainly over the high 40s. As we hear Fatty Roots cranking in the studio. It's the studio PA on. All right, very nice. Well, we can never get enough Fatty Roots.
No, that's true. We never
get those positive vibrations. They're also another sign of summer and spring and warm weather, those nice reggae tunes. All right, so yes, this is, what day of the year are we here? We're late
getting
March.
Close to the end of March.
Spring has sprung. We missed a couple weeks here. Scheduling, snow, all sorts of stuff, whatever. We're back and March Madness is underway, so we need to catch up. But let's first say hello to my right-hand man, Mr. Bob Broad Jr.
How are you, Scott?
I am doing well. Bob was kind enough to be handing out some invitations today in the studio.
Yes, my wedding invitations.
Very, very nice.
May 16th. We'll be here.
Very nice.
You know
Bob, so Spotlight On airs Tuesday nights at 9, Wednesdays at 12. There's no more Danbury Whalers games to be putting up on the show.
They won they won the home game and then tanked the other two.
They are out of the FHL playoffs, losing to Watertown.
And then we had a little incident on the last
second time in the second year. The police got involved.
Yes, over 20 police officers, sheriffs, state police, the whole 9 yards, all over a couple of scuffles.
Dust up that area between the players' bench going into the locker room is kind of runs right into where the fans are, and they get into some scuffles there.
And two of our players ended up being arrested.
Yeah. So
they have to appear in Watertown court.
In the add insult to injury, not only get knocked out of the postseason against your what is becoming a real hated rivalry with Watertown, you get a couple of guys spend the night in the pokey.
Yeah.
Locked up. So we'll follow that.
It took over an hour delay.
Yeah, game delayed an hour.
Yeah.
A deciding game 3 on the road. You're up against it already, and you got to deal with two of your players getting arrested in between the second and third intermission, the game being delayed an hour before coming back and ultimately losing. We're jumping ahead a little bit. Let's also mention that our man Mike Toohey is in the control room. His show Expose Cinema, Friday nights at 9, Wednesdays at 1. Of course, Mr. Mike McFadden is down here. And Connor, of course, he is here as well, the production assistant extraordinaire in the studio, making sure those guys are handling their business.
Currently, it's Watertown is up over Danville, 2-1.
So Watertown looking to bring home the FHL Cup, the Commissioner's Cup, as it were.
Yeah.
They'll look to close that out. Is that this coming weekend they finish?
It's tonight.
Oh, it's tonight.
Tonight.
Thursday night.
If Danville ties the game up to 2-2, they will go back to Watertown to finish it.
Right. So the locals, FHL people will be interested in that. Other people will be interested in March Madness, of course.
You call it March Madness or March Insanity?
Or March Sadness for some. For those that did not get in, of course, I did mention we are live, 203-792-4101. At the top of the show, we saw a nice picture of Bob out there directing traffic.
Yes,
Before we dive into March Madness, Bob, I do got to... Well, first let's make a quick mention of the Play for Purpose 72-hour hockey game that is coming up. We got to plug this thing. It's for a great charity event, May 7th through 10th, Mother's Day weekend. You know, my friend's son, Caden, is involved in this. He's a heart surgery, open heart surgery, four open heart surgeries for this kid. Survivor. He's the poster boy for the procedure that they're doing. He's a healthy, happy kid now, and they are raising money so others like him can also be healthy and happy as well. Go to playforpurpose.org to look up any of the possible things, and see if you can get involved. If you know somebody who likes to skate, wants to get involved, because 72 hours is a long time. They need people to come in and skate. You can go individually, as a team, however you want to do it. Play for Purpose, May 7th through 10th. We'll keep talking about it in this upcoming month leading up to that. But we did want to mention that one more time and take a look at those great photos again. And then the other thing we want to mention, because we were here promoting the chilly winter warm-up,
which we had a very good turnout as far as
Who
runners.
Who won the chili contest? Did the Danbury Center win last year?
They won last year.
Did they not defend their title?
I do believe they did not win again.
Okay.
I know the girls from over at 13s won for the fire department.
So this was a snowy day.
It was more than a snowy day. It was a mess.
Nasty day. We saw Bob out there as part of the traffic directing. Bob,
yeah, I was on at the start of the
I would
race.
be remiss if I did not raise into serious questions who was in charge of this whole operation. I had to receive not one, not two, not three phone calls from my wife.
Oh, she gets stuck in traffic?
Who was stuck in traffic, unable to move while driving through downtown Bethel. She was funneled in with a whole bunch of other people into a side road that no one was allowed to move as the runners were running by, including one red hot chili pepper.
Yes, which I don't know how he ran in that costume.
One and only local Bethel guy, Wayne Ritter. Hats off to you, my friend. I was at the Halloween party last year.
From the start to about halfway up the road, and then he kind of
I was at the Halloween
gas.
party last year where he unveiled this chili pepper costume. Little did I know he was going to join in the chilly winter warm-up.
Yeah.
Perfect. He's got to do it every year now.
Yeah.
He's a staple.
Hopefully he has a different costume every year.
Well, he has different costumes for Halloween every year, but that chili pepper costume is perfect for the winter warm-up.
Yes.
But yes, Bob, I was stuck listening to my wife
where'd she get?
curse a blue streak.
What part of the race did she get
Over
stuck
by the
at?
storage.
Oh, okay, about down on Durant.
Where it loops around to the right. Why did they needed to
I have
block that
nothing-
whole area off?
I have nothing
Direct
to do
traffic
with
away from the post office, away from Main Street. Just keep them all at Greenwood Avenue and say you can't go over there during the race. They let cars drive in, and then they stopped them all on one side of the road. Runners were running in circles around them for a half hour. People were losing their minds, and it was snowing, and the roads were actually getting quite bad.
Oh, yes, I know.
So people were getting stuck and then having to drive 30 minutes later after more ice and snow was coming down. Not good, Bob. Not good at all.
I
So
think
we
were talking, we might have to start moving this to like April or something.
Well, maybe, because you've had snow a couple times now.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it is the winter warm-up, though.
I know, but I think we're talking, maybe we might be able to talk a spring warm-up.
Well, people survived. They had fun with it. Everybody had a good time. There's your warm-up right there. The Sports Illustrated Rookie of the Year. We talked
And
about
she's
her when
from
the issue came
Connecticut.
out. The Greenwich, Connecticut girl. Kelly Roraback, I think it is. They have the name in there, hopefully, in the studio. Maybe they can tell us. But Kelly from Greenwich, Connecticut. She is the Rookie of the Year. There's your warm-up right there, Bob.
Yeah.
Right there. And we could look at some spring training stuff. That would warm us up. But we're not going to do that because we've already killed some time. And we got to get into March Madness. Memo to the NCAA tournament committee in your selection process.
What a mess.
Get over yourself with these big conferences. Nobody wants to see a team that goes 18-13 and goes 1-6 in their final 7 games in this tournament just because they played in the so-called powerful Big 12. Oklahoma State does not belong in this tournament. And then even if you look, Bob, and they went out along with Texas, who did
Right.
not belong in this tournament, went 3-6 in their final 9 games. I thought NC State was a little bit of a question mark. UCLA did not have one road win over a top 100 team all season. That gets them in, even though they're, useless 20-13 record. We don't need to see these teams in. Xavier, another team, UCLA, Xavier, and NC State, give them credit for coming up with some wins here. But Xavier was the 6th seed in the Big East tournament. Where did they end up in the NCAA tournament? As a 6th seed, Bob.
Yeah.
How does that work?
I don't know.
They're
That doesn't make any
9-9,
sense.
20 in Big East play, 21-13 overall, and they're in this big dance somehow. There's no rhyme or reason to what they're doing. Seedings were ridiculous. Georgetown gets seeded 4 with 10 losses on the season.
Yeah, I know. It doesn't.
Dayton had a good enough record to be in the tournament, yet they somehow, at 25-8, they make them into the play-in game, giving them a home game in Dayton.
Right.
They were 16-0 and home in that building this year, and they had to play Boise, and Boise State had to go there and play them in this neutral site tournament.
Right.
It's totally ridiculous, and Boise State blew the game. They were up 9 late, and Dayton went on a 10-0 run in the final minute to win it, 56-55. That is completely unfair. And why, if you're not going to reward teams that play in small conferences like Murray State, who had 25 wins in a row, they got beat at the buzzer in their conference tournament on a desperation three-pointer. They knocked them out of the tournament. So what they're saying is these mid-major small conference teams aren't strong enough.
Right.
Why then are you going to go ahead and say, well, you know what, we actually think Northern Iowa, who has no history whatsoever in this tournament, is strong enough, and we're going to give them a 5 seed over Michigan State, who's a 7 seed.
Right.
And then have Michigan State go ahead and play Virginia, who should have been a 1 seed in the second round. And meanwhile, Louisville gets a cakewalk against Northern Iowa in the second round.
Yeah.
And Virginia's out. Louisville's still in. I mean, it's just ridiculous. They speak out of both sides of their mouth with what they're talking with all this nonsense. And give me a break with these good losses.
And then the best part is, look at the officiating. Some of the officiating has been so...
Well, somebody should have told the refs at the UCLA-SMU game that SMU was a worthy team in this conference, in this tournament, and that UCLA didn't belong at all. So why on earth are you rewarding them 3 points on a desperation three-point air ball with 10 seconds left in the game to give them the win? It's an air ball that goes beyond the rim, past it. The defender goes up to grab the rebound. They call goaltending because it didn't touch the rim. I mean, if it had touched the rim, it would have been better off for SMU. Instead, it didn't touch anything, so they say he's goaltending because he's blocking it out of the air as it's coming down. It was an air ball that went wide of the rim, nowhere near it.
It was, I don't know how many inches from...
They give UCLA the game. Unbelievable. They win 60-59, and then they catch the break of all breaks because UAB, who was, a 14 seed, stunned one of those supposed power Big 12 teams. And how is that conference doing? The only team left from the Big 12 is West Virginia. Wait a second. Are they really a Big 12 team? Or are they a Big East team? What conference are they in now? Do we even know?
We don't know anymore because they keep changing.
All the other Big 12 teams are actually out.
Yeah.
West Virginia's still in. Iowa State got shocked by UAB at the buzzer. So UCLA gets to not only get the gift of all gifts from this bogus air ball, then they get to play UAB. So all of a sudden they find themselves in the Sweet 16. It is setting up a good matchup actually because it is two good West Coast teams, UCLA versus Gonzaga. And now, Gonzaga has looked pretty good.
What's your take? You think Kentucky how far they can go?
Kentucky. I think tonight's game is actually pretty tough for them. Cincinnati played them very well, and especially in the first half. That game was a 1-point game or so going into halftime. Very, very physical. Cincinnati played them, defensively very good. Kentucky's defense is outstanding. That's the one thing that gets overlooked sometimes. You think about Kentucky, you think about offense, but really they are a defensive team. So Cincinnati does not have enough offense. And back to the snubs, Bob. How does Cincinnati, the 4 seed in the AAC, get into the tournament, but the 2 seed Tulsa with 14-4 conference record, and Temple at 13-5, 3 seed. Temple plays in the AAC Conference Championship. Right. How did those teams not get into the tournament, but Cincinnati's it?
It doesn't make sense. I'm sorry.
Are they rating Cincinnati because they're a former Big East team and
it's very
possible. Put six Big East teams in? Memo to the committee. There's only 10 Big East teams now. There's not 18 anymore. Mm-hmm. So putting 6 teams in is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of in my life. And also, here's another memo. Providence, and look, if my dad's watching, he's going to be upset with me because he's a Rhode Island guy and he loves Providence.
Right.
But I'm sorry. Providence has no business winning any games. Is it a coincidence that Providence is, all of a sudden playing in, the Big East Conference Championship in the back-to-back years because, all these other teams like Louisville, Cincinnati, West Virginia, Notre Dame, Connecticut, they all don't play there anymore. You don't have to play against those teams. Pitt is no longer there to knock you off. You and St. John's. Why is St. John's, who went 10-11 in their final 21 games, they had their top player suspended for drug use before the tournament. He can't even play, yet they put them in this tournament, Bob? And yet my Colorado State team, who went 26-7, 13-5, made it to the semifinal of their conference, their best season ever, and they do not get into this tournament. When you're putting 13 lost teams in that lost multiple games down the stretch, I remind you, Oklahoma State, 18-13, losers of 6 of their final 7 games. That's what people in this country want to see? And spare me this whole nonsense that small mid-major teams can't make it. It's been 10 years since George Mason made it to the Final Four. Since then, Butler's been there twice to the championship game, let alone the Final Four.
Right.
Dayton was in the Elite Eight last year. Come on. These teams are making runs left and right. VCU has been to the Final Four. These teams can play, and they do play, and they win games, and they get there. Put Old Dominion in because they had a good season. Put Murray State in because they had a good season. Don't reward these teams because they're losing against so-called top competition when these little teams are knocking those teams out of the tournament.
Yeah, I know.
It makes no sense, Bob.
No.
Give me a break. I really was furious, absolutely furious with the committee this year. I almost and should have boycotted filling out my bracket because I'm way down the standings with the negative. I got, 3/4 of my bracket is doing exceptionally well, Bob.
It's the bottom.
That Eastern bracket killed me. Yeah. I believed in Virginia again, who killed me last year, and they killed me again.
The only thing we can say positive is that the UConn girls are doing very well.
And then, Bob, don't get me started on the women's side of things.
Come on, let's get going.
Princeton is what? 31-0.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What do they get up for that? An 8 seed, so they're going to have to play 1-seeded Maryland in the second round in Maryland.
Yeah.
Because in the women's tournament, the early round games are home games for the top seeds, so they can sell tickets to these games. So Princeton's reward for going undefeated is they got to play a 1 seed on the road in the round of 32.
Yeah.
Who is in charge? Who is in charge of these things? It's unbelievable.
It's 3 blind mice that's sitting in there going.
So the Lady Huskies doing quite well, obviously. The men were not up for playing in the NIT. Boatwright sat on the bench with his injury. He got hurt in the SMU game, the final AAC championship, but that's no big deal for them. Some of the other teams going good. Let's talk historical aspect before we break things down. I think West Virginia, what we were saying, Bob, Cincinnati, tough physical team, but no offense and no depth.
Right.
West Virginia, on the other hand, loads of depth, waves of players that come in, up-tempo, full-court press, all game long. Coach Huggins, 8-2 against Coach Calipari, including knocking Kentucky out in the John Wall team, which was the first of these Calipari Kid Cat teams with the one-and-doner freshman teams. He knocked him and Boogie Cousins out, West Virginia did. So maybe they can do that again tonight. Good matchups, really, tonight. Wichita State, I hope they don't overlook Notre Dame and get excited for a possible rematch against Kentucky. We remember what happened last year.
Yeah, I know that could very well happen too.
Wichita State, what a game against Kansas this past weekend. Did they show up and show up well, knocking them out? So that's a good one. So there's some good stuff going on in the games. I mean, you know, it's going to be good, really, to see what happens with the, you know, you got Xavier versus Arizona. Sean Miller used to coach at Xavier. Now he's coaching Arizona. He's rated as the best young coach not to make the Final Four. Arizona's a legitimate threat. Other Final Four, Sweet 16 games coming up tonight and tomorrow. Wisconsin and North Carolina. North Carolina survived Harvard in that opening round, Bob.
That was a very tough game.
Right down to the wire. Harvard actually had the lead. It was tied. They get the ball coming down. They launch an ill-advised long shot. Long rebound led to a fast break dunk. North Carolina wins it by 2. Brutal for Harvard in that game, but North Carolina gets it done. Wisconsin looked pretty good. Second half was kind of strong against Oregon in their round of 32 game. NC State, Bob, how about this? Some of the inept offense. You talk about the officiating being inept. How about some of the offense in some of these games? In that round 1 game, North Carolina State versus LSU, LSU finished the game up by 13, right? They missed their final 12 shots from the field, and worse than that, they missed 6 straight free throws in the final 2 minutes of the game. NC State scores at the buzzer, wins it by 1, and now they're in the Sweet 16 because they knocked off the cream puff Villanova, who came up ultra lame in their round of 32 game. So NC State versus Louisville. We mentioned Louisville had the cakewalk over Northern Iowa, who was, you know, everybody was picking Northern Iowa. I'm like, why? Who are they? And then we got Oklahoma. Dayton, you know, we mentioned they caught the break playing at home in that play-in game against Boise State. And then they knocked off Providence, who was so pathetic in that game, really weak, 66-53, didn't even show up. And then they were losing to Dayton, and that game was in also in Ohio, but Dayton ran out of gas. They played 6 games in like 8 days because they had to play in, plus their conference tournament and all that. They get Michigan State. Duke and Utah, I kind of like what I'm seeing from Utah. Utah not getting much ratings, not much love. We'll see what happens with them. And UCLA Gonzaga. Historical aspect, Bob, with Kentucky. All right, you cannot compare Kentucky to any of the previous undefeated great teams of all time because it's a completely different era. You know, you have teams now playing with freshmen all the time or maybe 2-year players, and you would be comparing them to teams that played with 3- and 4-year players, seniors, juniors. The last team, of course, 75-76 Indiana team that went 32-0. Where's Strange Man Stat of the Week when you need him? I'll fill in for him right here, Bob. Here's your little Strange Man Stat of the Week.
Okay.
There was another team that went into the Final Four that year undefeated. So there was 2 undefeated teams that went to the Final Four. The other team ended up with 2 losses because they used to play a consolation game as well. So not only did that team lose the semifinal, they lost the consolation game. Here's a hint as to who it is. They are from the Northeast, former Big East team that moved to the Big Ten this past year. Pandemonium in Pascatona, or whatever they call that. Rutgers.
Oh, Rutgers.
Rutgers. Scarlet Knights were undefeated then in 76. They lost, ended up losing 2 games. You know of all the UCLA teams that went undefeated. Last year, I mean, we had Wichita State go 35-0 before getting knocked off by Kentucky in the round of 2. You know, so there's some other teams. North Carolina in 56 and 57. My guy Bill Russell.
Yes.
San Francisco led them to a title at 29-0. 4 of the UCLA teams finished 30-0, which just goes to show you that they didn't play as many games as they do now, because if Kentucky goes undefeated, they will finish 40-0.
Right.
You know, Indiana State, they were undefeated before getting knocked off. So the last one to make it and win was Indiana. UNLV and Indiana State did it, but got knocked off in the Final Four or the championship game. We mentioned Rutgers. Houston, the Cougars did that as well in 67-68. So the Cougars were a team before Five Slamma Jamma that did that also. So, you know, there's been some teams that have done it, but you can't compare these this Kentucky team as to, you know, you think that Bill Walton in his senior year would be worried about facing up with Willie Cauley-Stein and the Harrison twins?
I would say so.
You think he would?
Nowadays.
Well, in his
heyday, yes.
In his heyday.
Yeah, maybe not.
Lou Alcindor, you know, I don't think he's going to be all that concerned.
But
in his senior year playing for UCLA with other seniors by his side going up against a Kentucky team like this, Bob. So, and I don't think that Indiana would have as well. And, you know, San Francisco, Bill Russell wouldn't be losing any sleep over that either.
No, neither with Mr. Frazier or
no, you know.
Or any of the other great
So
legends.
it's different eras, so it is hard to compare, you know, what will happen, you know, how to match it up. But I think it's pretty clear that this team and this era is not quite what it is. So I don't know, Bob. I think somewhere along the line, Kentucky's going to get knocked off because the SEC was down this year. All their teams are out.
Right.
They got, what, 4 or 5 teams in, which they got too many in, really. But I think somebody's going to pick them off. Who is it going to be is the question. Will West Virginia get it done tonight? Right. In my tournament bracket, I'm looking for the matchup of Wichita State rematch. And I like Wichita State, their senior-laden team. They played exceptionally well against Kansas the other day. I think they got the jitters out. I think they could really come up with something big against Kentucky if it comes down to that. Looking ahead, Arizona is real good, which would be bad for me because I picked Wisconsin to beat Arizona, but I kind of like what I see out of Arizona more than what I see out of Wisconsin, so that could happen. Duke, I have a bad feeling, is going to make it to the final, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But they might get knocked off by Utah. I don't know if Gonzalez will come out of that bracket or not. I am hoping so. I kind of see a Louisville versus Michigan State matchup, which would be a big powerhouse matchup, and we'll see who comes out from there. Okay. It'd be a shock because both those teams had down years this year, and here they are getting favorable matchups, leading themselves to possible Final Four berths.
We will not be live next week.
We will do its tape show to preview the Final Four and then maybe talk about a little hockey and a little bit of NBA as well and some spring training. Get your thoughts on Matt Harvey not starting opening day. Is McFadden losing his mind in there?
Oh, yeah.
Is he losing it? I mean, why is Matt Harvey not pitching opening day? All right, we're out of here. We will see you next week.
Okay, take care.